Hello. Today I'm just going to go over, hopefully quickly, a little demonstration on how to do an HDR Pano in Lightroom. If you've ever shot HDR or Pano before, you know that combining the two techniques can be a little bit complicated. But luckily now that Lightroom has both features built in, we don't have to use Photoshop anymore for stitching either of these things together. Although you still can. It's a very powerful program. Anyway, let's look at this pano that I took down at Shem Creek Park at sunset, and we had some decent dynamic range between the shadows and the highlights, and I just wanted to make sure that I captured everything. Now this is not a lesson on how to capture HDRs or panos. That's a whole different kind of class. I just want to show you how to put them together. But just real quick, when you're shooting an HDR or a pano, there's a few things that have to remain constant when you are capturing them, and that is things like your white balance, your focus, so basically turn off all of the auto settings. You want to turn off autofocus because you don't want it changing your focus point. You want to turn off auto ISO because that will prevent you from taking the HDR, because it will try to overcome the overexposed and underexposed shots. And you want to maintain your white balance, and definitely do not use a polarizer because you're going to get these little strips of lighter blue and darker blue that are going to be difficult to stitch together for the pano. So the order that I typically do things for putting together an HDR pano is to first put the HDR photos together. And so I'm not going to go through the entire pano here because I actually shot 9 vertical HDR images. So I've got 3, 6, 9, I've got a lot. 27 images here, and that would take a very long time to go through, so let's just move this along. So what I would normally do with Lightroom is to select my 3 HDR images. So I've got my metered exposure, my underexposure, this is 2 stops under, and my overexposure. And then I'm just going to go up to Photo, Photo Merge, HDR, and it will bring in my 3 images. I usually leave the deghost overlay on. We had a little bit of wind, there may be some blowing around of the marsh grasses, but it wasn't too bad. Though I do turn off auto tone. I don't want the software making any creative decisions for me at this point, especially since I want to merge these with the pano to blend them together. But I do click on auto align, and some people might actually try this with the auto tone. You can try it both ways, but I prefer to leave it off. It just gives you a little bit more flexibility when I come out. And so I'm going to click on merge. Looks like I don't have any deghosting going on here, so I'm just going to click on merge, and it will put them together, and it will create a DNG file, which is like a universal raw image, because right here my raw images say .nef, which is the Nikon format. And it should put the DNG right next to, if you've got it set in your preferences, to have it put it right next to it, and there it is. So there's HDR to DNG right there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm not going to mess with that one. That's my HDR image. I'm going to go to the next set of metered, underexposed, and overexposed. So I'm going to do this again. Now I'm just going to do this 2 or 3 times because I don't want to go through all 9 of them, like I said. So photo, photo merge, HDR again. Here we are. I'm going to grab the metered exposure, the underexposed, and the overexposed. Going to go to photo, photo merge, HDR, and let it do the second set. Okay, there's the second set, and I'm just going to click on merge, and it will put those together and spit out our DNG number 2. Now you may have noticed that all of these have got star ratings. Now that's something that I did when I first went through my images and decided what to keep and what not to keep, and that's just a personal practice that I have. But what I'm going to do here, just so that I know that when I'm stitching the pano together, especially since I took 9 vertical sets here is I'm going to give this one an extra star just to distinguish it from the actual raw files. It'll just make it a little bit easier when I go to stitch the pano. So here's another DNG. So there's the first one, there's the second one, and I'm going to grab the next 3 images. This is metered, underexposed, overexposed. I'm going to, you can either command click or shift click and grab all 3 of them. Again, here we go again, HDR. Thank goodness we don't have to do this the old-fashioned way. And here we have the next merged image, so I'm just going to click merge right here, and it will put them together and create yet another DNG. So now I'm going to skip the rest of these in the interest of time, and I'm just going to blend the 3 DNGs that were put together here. Okay, and there it is, HDR to DNG right there. So I'm going to select these 3. Let's just go ahead and get rid of everything else. Oops. By clicking on the 2 stars and higher, it just narrows it down and it gets rid of some of that mess. So I'm less likely to make a mistake here, which is good. What you can do at this point, since now you have 3 different HDR photos, you can select all of them, shift click, go into the develop module, and you can make changes. But basically what you want to avoid is making a change to one and not doing the same thing to the other. So if I wanted to come in here and maybe bring down the highlights a little bit, maybe bring down my whites, bring up my shadows, a little bit more vibrance, just, you know, very simple things that you can do. Maybe come in here and do a little noise control if you like, but essentially what you want to do is you want to sync them. Since I've only made a couple of changes, I'm just going to go ahead and say synchronize all of these things just to keep it simple and fast. Go back to grid view and make sure again that we have all of these selected. Right, so shift, select all, and we're going to go photo, photo merge. This time we're going to say panorama instead of HDR since we already have our HDRs. Okay, and here we have the pano made from 3 of the 9 images. Usually the first setting that Lightroom has picked works pretty well, which in this case was spherical, but you can also try, if things look a little strange for whatever reason, you can try either the cylindrical or the perspective, and it will just change how these 3 images are blended a little bit. Some things look better than others. Gonna keep it there. You can actually auto crop at this point. If I turn that on, it gets rid of all of the extraneous edges. I don't prefer to do that myself simply because if I decide to bring the final image into Photoshop and I wanted to crop it and I get this little strip of white right here, I might clone that in right there along the edges. So in case you just are a little bit worried about losing some of your edges, I would not auto crop at this point. But if you have no issues with that, then go ahead and crop it. It makes things a little easier. You click on merge and it will bring it back into Lightroom as your pano. And it should actually say HDR-pano.dng. After it has had some time to huff and puff and yell at you for putting such a big file on it, when your computer's done, here it is. It spits out this DNG. There it is, HDR2Pano.dng, and you can just treat this as your new starting point and just treat it like any other image that you bring into your photo editing space. And bring it into the develop module, make any changes that you like, bring it into Photoshop or use a plugin, whatever it is that you would normally do. Just in case you were curious as to what my final product was, this is the 9 images stitched together. It was a very long pano, but I thought it was nice. I think that the sunset that evening kind of deserved being captured all across the sky. It had a lot going on. So again, if you guys have any questions, you can contact me through my website, And I hope that this has helped a little bit with your learning how to stitch HDR panos in Lightroom. Thanks for watching.